issues and consulting with complainants. And furthermore, which is important that I would like to raise kindly, Chairperson, is also the reviewing of our assessments. And that I have actually employed a method where our executive managers are the ones who are doing the assessments of the cases, whereas before it was done at a much junior level. This is to mitigate the risk of a matter being investigated over a longer period of time.
Thank you very much. You have identified one of the key challenges, that there is trust deficit to the PPSA office, not the individual, and also between government and citizens. What are the basis of this, and what becomes the role of the PP in correcting those deficits?
Firstly, as the Public Protector Office, it is important that in the manner in which we take our decisions becomes in a manner that is of integrity. Our reports must be reports of integrity. But secondly is that our remedial actions must be implementable. Now that starts with us in the process and the procedure which we apply in arriving at the end, in taking the remedial action, that it must be implementable. But in respect of government, the issue is accountability and responsiveness, and being in touch with the people who have elected the government. We have found that to be a major challenge, and the issues of undue delay in responding to the challenges that the people are raising. And finally as well, the oversight by the legislature, which is not as effective as it's supposed to be.
Okay, the last one, Chair. In your own, it's got nothing to do with us. Your view, I just want to get your view in terms of the current government. Did it make a mistake not to do an exodus in terms of the public servants and have the new public servants? Because it seems like it's a crime. That's my view. But I want to get your view. If you serve the current government, as it were, is it fair for public technocrats, as it were?
Not at all.
The perception that I have.
Not at all. First and foremost, our country has laws. So every action needs to be in line with the laws. There's the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, there's the Labor Relations Act, within which every government or every individual exercising public power needs to subject themselves in respect of employees. My view is that employees who work for government are supposed to be professionals and ethical people who are actually serving the country and the people in the country, but not individuals, not the political dispensation, but who serve in line with the constitution of the country.
The AG's report says that you have overspent in terms of your budget in the year under review. How would you ensure that you change that situation? Thank you, Chair, and I'm done.
Looking at the issues raised by the AG, it's historical issues of the legal fees surrounding the Office of the Public Protector on litigation, but also the cases, but of the litigation of the Public Protector. What we are currently doing, we've reviewed our governance system in our legal department as well as in our finance, but also we are ensuring that we are conducting our investigations in such a manner that we prevent the litigation at the scale at which it was at, and our reports will be able to defend themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Hon, you are owing me 2 minutes. It's a payback time.
No. I have received another minute, so that would make it 9.
Okay, sure. Back to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Kaleka.
Good afternoon, Honorable Hon.
Yeah, so when you came to be interviewed as the Deputy Public Protector, we touched base on your period with ex-Minister Malusi Gigaba. Since then, we've had the benefit of the Zondo Commission costing this country R1 billion, but which favored us with massive amounts of information, amongst others, about your former principal. So I want to revisit your period there and again ask you, did you at the time advise the minister about his close relations with the Guptas and the fact that it exposed him and the country by extension to impropriety, to borrow the words that's used in the Constitution in respect of the Public Protector?
Honorable Hon, At the time of when I was interviewed for the Deputy Public Protector position, I was very clear that at the time when I worked with Mr. Kikaba, I had no knowledge of his relationship with the Guptas. During my work with him, I had no knowledge of the Guptas. They have never come to the office. I have never seen them. I had never known of his relationship with them. At the time when the issue came up, it came up in the public. And I asked him about it, and he denied any association with the Gupta family.
Okay, and looking back, a professional special advisor, should you have not, given the fact that the allegations at least were already in the public domain, have acted more proactively to protect your minister?
In which way, Honorable Hon, if you could kindly elaborate, to protect him in which way?
Protect him against what happened ultimately. He lost his position in the executive, primarily as a consequence of this relationship.
It's not my duty, particularly as an advisor, to protect a minister. The duty of an advisor is to advise the minister in line with his duties in serving the Republic, not on anything personal, because an advisor is employed in terms of Section 12A of the Public Service Act, and it is not a personal advisor, and the advisor performs their duties in line with the law in respect of the advices that an advisor would provide to the minister.
Okay, I'll park that issue. I want to go to your answer around the review of administrative action, specifically in the context of the work of the Public Protector. And what interested me is the fact that you said that reasonableness, rationality, and proportionality in that context is specifically relevant for the Public Protector Office in the exercise of a discretion. Can you explain to us how, when you embark on an investigation, there is a room for you to be confronted with a discretion?
Yes, the Public Protector, for instance, after it has been decided that the Public Protector has jurisdiction in a matter, it then becomes the Public Protector's discretion on the form that the investigation takes in respect of that matter. For instance, where you've got jurisdiction, and this has been confirmed in the GEMS matter, where you've got jurisdiction, you then have to look into the totality of your matters and say, are you going to investigate everything that is before you? Now, the GEMS judgment actually says that the Public Protector has a discretion, for instance, to remit other matters to other public bodies which have the authority over those matters. And
then,
that is...
Yeah, thank you. That's a satisfactory answer. But then once you've embarked on an investigation, you've now exercised your discretion, say, okay, I'm going to take this on board. Where can a discretion then come into play, if at all?
Once you are investigating your particular matter, now what comes into play is the legalities that you face within that matter. It is on the methodology, on how you apply that particular methodology, which witnesses are relevant and which witnesses are going to assist you in your investigations, or any other evidence which would assist you to come to a final decision which is in line with the law.
Is the decision to decide which witnesses are relevant discretionary in nature?
Well, it is discretionary.
Are you quite sure?
Yes.
Okay. Then I want to come to your section 196. You've already answered some questions on it. What is the lodestar, the guiding principle now thrashed out by our courts of the method that is to be used for a proper interpretation of any statute or law?
The proper interpretation of any statute of the law, firstly, the supreme law of the country is the Constitution. So in interpreting that law, you need to to look at what were the objects of the Constitution, what is the principle and the values and the spirit of the Constitution in line with that particular law.
Maybe we're missing one another. There is a court case of the Supreme Court of Appeal which is now settled in the constitutional era. What is the approach anyone who interprets a law must take? What is that case?
Recently, there is the case of the SARS, which the court took in interpretation of the Tax Administration Act.
Are you aware of Natal Joint Municipal Pension Fund versus Mkhwebane?
No, I'm not aware of that
Okay.
case.
So that's actually the case, and the case says that context, you refer to context, must be given by the apparent purpose of a provision. Now, what's the purpose behind the provision in Section 196, which says the President and members of the Executive cannot have other paid work?
The purpose for that is to ensure that the duties that the executive undertake become the primary duty, and that it is not overweighted by the secondary duty, which is the private interest, and further that there is no risk of a conflict between the primary duty and the personal interest.
Yeah, well, that the member of the Executive do not expose themselves to the potential of a risk
Indeed.
of conflict of interest.
Indeed.
So in your Pala report, though, that second leg is nowhere to be found. Would you agree? You only say that ultimately the financial interests did not distract the President unduly from his primary responsibilities.
Not at all, Honourable Member. We discuss the issue of the conflict of interest in the Pala report. Now, primarily what we need to look at, which we actually have interacted with, which has also been confirmed by the Constitutional Court in the recent case of the suspended public protector, whether there is a real risk. Now, there mustn't just be a suspicion or a far-fetched risk or any other potential which is not related on whether there is a real risk of a conflict of interest in the particular matter. And that we have interacted with in our report.
Okay. Lastly, how many reports have you been in charge of in terms of the investigation and bringing out the report, both as the deputy and now as acting, which has been finalized?
Well, I have signed 107 reports. I've interacted with more than that. The figures I do not have, but obviously those were not signed by me.
Okay. And how many of them have been taken on review?
We have 3.
And has any of them been finalized yet?
None of those have been finalized.
Okay. Thank you.
I gave you 9. So, you took 9, you're right. Honourable Vessels?
Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
You reflected on your time at the Department of Home Affairs. I want to go back to that as well, but more to, in general, your time at government departments, especially, it wasn't very long, but at the DPSA. Given that experience, what would you say is the root cause of the overall lack of service delivery, or let's say bad public service that we are experiencing?
Overall, the lack of efficient and effective service delivery, it starts with proper planning. It starts with proper planning, from the strategic planning, the implementation of the operational plannings, but also in ensuring that services are delivered equitably, but also budgeting in that respect is a challenge. But also the capacity and capability of public officials in understanding where we are as a country and what are the priorities. There's a lot of maladministration that takes place, but there is just where systems are not moving. But also there is a factor that each time when a new minister is appointed into a department, it is as if it is a totally new administration or it is a totally new department altogether. There is no continuity in terms of execution of responsibilities.
You say that one of your priorities currently, and if you are a successful candidate, will be to also focus on institutionalizing training at the public protector. Is there currently a lack of skilled staff members?
Indeed, there is inadequacy in terms of skilled staff members, and this has been confirmed by an organizational development study which we have done as an institution.
Are you under-resourced, understaffed currently as well?
We are under-resourced both in terms of human resource and financial resource.
What have you done during your tenure as acting public protector to make the institution more accessible for the public and for communities?
I've embarked on intensive stakeholder and outreach programs, particularly into the rural areas which have no access to the public protector in terms of technology. In terms of technology, we have, which is work that actually began before the public protector was suspended, but which we completed, where we've got an app where those who have means are able to access the Office of the Public Protector. And next week, Monday, we will actually be launching our Please Call Me app, which will enable those who do not have smartphones, who are underprivileged and do not have the financial resources to access us and send us a Please Call Me. We have also made use of stakeholders like Amakhosi, so that we are able to access their constituencies. But we have also now approached business. For instance, we would want to have a drop box at ShopRite, at Checkers, in any other area, so that when a person goes to town, they are able to file a complaint at that instance and not necessarily look for the Office of the Public Protector.
I'm glad you're reflecting on that, because if I look at your priority of digitization and digitalization and digital transformation, then it feels to me as if you're leaving out the rural, majority of rural South Africans. But even Please Call Me's are in many instances inaccessible to a large part of our population. And even the Dropbox idea, how will you get a public protector accessible in those communities, in rural Eastern Cape, rural KwaZulu-Natal, where there's no cell phone signal, no electricity, no Checkers, no ShopRite?
We actually go to those areas. I have personally been to Ndabankulu, where the residences were being transported with a drum from one area to the other. They couldn't access service delivery because officials could not access their areas because of a lack of a bridge. We have been there as the Office of the Public Protector. We have been into an area in Umtata where the roads do not permit for people to walk through those roads, but we have been there. So we've got outreach program, and our outreach particularly focuses on those areas, indeed, Honourable Member, where at times there is no signal and where they are unable to use any other phone, but we are able to go there. But our program with Amakhosi assists us to be able to access the rurals, because we are now planning on having drop boxes at the royal houses where people normally go, and they'll be able to access that.
Don't you also think the lack of confidence is due to the fact that people out there don't always understand? And I don't want to go into the debate that has been had on the Pala report, but do you really think the people out there understand the reasoning that you are here in very technical legal terms explaining and have explained, but it's not really explained to the person out there, the reason?
We actually do. We work together with community radio stations, where we go on onto those community radio stations and explain our work in the languages that are understood by the people there, but as well as our pamphlets come in different South African languages. So we are able to have that accessibility with the people of South Africa.
One last question, because I think I'm out of time. You say that you would prioritize, and you spoke on it earlier, the legislative reform with regards to criminalization of the non-compliance with remedial action. But do you think that will really address the current non-response to remedial action?
It's a multifaceted approach. So we have included that as one of the options. The other option, which we've also included, is for the Speaker of the National Assembly to have some mechanisms in place so that once we submit the reports and the outstanding remedial action, that is able to then be filtered down to the committees which will enforce their oversight. And that is a process that we are already doing. For instance, now we've been called by the Committee on Education as well as Sports to discuss our report with them because of that exercise. But what is most important for us is that from the time when you write an allegations letter to a public official or a public institution, start to discuss the remedial action in that respect. That should there be such a finding in respect of this act, this should be the kind of reforms. I must commend the Western Cape government as well as the Gauteng government in most instances where we actually put in place that mechanisms. Even before we finalize our report, they would have started to implement the reforms. But also, in the Section 7.9, make sure that your reforms are in line with the powers that the other party